Andrew Bridgen, we wish in New Zealand that we could be over there in England, because I tell you what, I would have Andrew's army organized like that if we were in England. I would love to be able to get on a plane and just go around your area supporting you, delivering leaflets, and I'm sure there'd be thousands of others of us who would do that. How is the campaigning going?
I think we're good on the ground. We could do with more boots on the ground. Clearly, we could get through the constituency faster. I've got over 40,000 houses to get round, and it's 120 square miles of constituency. I think the major stumbling block which we can't overcome is the fact that I don't get any national media or even local media. The local BBC offered me 15 seconds for a recorded message as to why people should vote for me, and that's after over 14 years as a elected representative. It works about 1 second a year, and they see that as fair and unbiased.
That is disgraceful. Can you get in any debates? Can you get in any group debates?
I think we've got one hustings organised. I mean, obviously the other candidates are not keen on having public hustings, but I'm doing public meetings every week anyway, and I'm meeting. I've actually got an appointment this evening. I'm addressing the monks at Mount St Bernard's Abbey. I've got the only order of Cistercian monks in England in my constituency. I go to them every election. This is my 5th general election, the first as an independent. And obviously, as an independent as well, you don't get any party support. So we're having to write all of the leaflets, and we're having to get them printed independently in the constituency. There's no sort of party support for any of that, and it does take time.
Andrew, if a group of Kiwi women or men or both wanted to fly over and support you and do the boots on the ground and deliver, would there be somewhere fairly rapidly that you could organise for them to stay? Do you have any hall that they could stay in, or would the locals be friendly enough to put them up in houses, do you think, to billet them?
I think it's more feasible if they've got relatives in the UK who are sympathetic, if they're anywhere near the Midlands. If we're out campaigning every day, I'll be straight after. Yes, obviously it's morning here in the UK. Straight after this interview, I'm going to go to the printers locally and pick up more leaflets, and I'll be meeting at a designated meeting point with our deliverers, and we'll be off until late this evening. Then I'll go off to my public meetings and speak tonight. So it's pretty all on. But if they must have relatives in the UK. If they're sympathetic, if they're nearby, that would be fantastic. If they can give a few hours to help get the message out. And we've got to build it over the next 3 weeks. We've got 17,000 postal vote letters to go out over the next week, which will be ready probably tomorrow. They've got to go out just before the postal votes go out. And that's quite a gargantuan task. That's every street in the constituency.
That's extraordinary. I mean, you are a world figure. To me, you are the one who is preeminent in the UK. I don't care about any of the others. They're all lost in the morass of WEF and WHO and UN. You are the one who should be the Prime Minister of the UK, and the world would take a whole shift on its axis. So the world needs to help you. What is it you need? Do you need money as well? Do you need donations sent in? And can we do that from New Zealand, Andrew?
You can, but you can't during an election period if it's more than £50.
Yes. Yeah, they do that here. Yeah.
The whole system is stacked to favour the party system, which is, as we know, a corrupt system. The Uni-party. I mean, what I'm watching, the election here is unbelievable. Rishi Sunak called the election, and he claims that his plan's working. Well, if his plan was working, surely would have waited till the autumn and demonstrated his plan was working further. He's called the election claiming that inflation has dropped to 2.3%, which is still 0.3% above the Bank of England's target. So no prospect at the moment of interest rate cuts. And they certainly, once he called an election, the Bank of England's not allowed to move interest rates because it would be seen as political. The fact is that Rishi Sunak knows that food price inflation is going to escalate enormously before the end of the summer. So basically, before he had to call the election by next January, this is as good as it's going to get. But there's no prospect of any interest rate cuts and mortgage rate relief to the public. He's also going to be terribly exposed on the Rwanda illegal migrant deportation system. That legislation was so weakly drafted. It was all for show. And I said this to him 18 months ago, without leaving the European Convention of Human Rights and probably our treaty agreement on refugees, all that Rwanda legislation is going to be is a charter for lawyers to earn an absolute fortune. I can assure you there's going to be nobody going to deported to Rwanda. And by November or January next year, it'll be very apparent to the public that the Rwanda policy was merely window dressing to show that the government were doing something. So again, he needs to go. And also, Rishi Sunak and our government have led the charge of escalating our involvement in the Ukraine war to the point now where we have got British citizens firing British missiles out of Ukraine into Russia. And other NATO countries have got exactly the same situation. They haven't told the people this, but the Russians are well aware of it. We keep being told that Ukraine are winning, but they're losing ground, and we have to keep sending more and more sophisticated weaponry, which the Ukrainians aren't trained to use. Even the F-16s, you might be able to train a few pilots, but they need 100 ground staff to maintain those sophisticated weapons platforms, and they will be provided by NATO countries. We are escalating our involvement with a superpower, and Rishi Sunak had made it known. I've got plenty of moles in the Ministry of Defence who feed me very accurate information. And Rishi Sunak had made it known to the generals, admirals, and air vice marshals that he didn't want to be a wartime leader. And he's pretty spineless, and he's running away. Last summer, him and his wife were house hunting in California, the place that he calls home. I don't think he has any loyalty to this country whatsoever. And the way he's conducted the campaign, the Tories must be absolutely pulling their hair out. The polls are dipping for his party all the time. Anyone would think he just wanted to ensure that Starmer is in with a big majority and can carry on with the WEF agenda. I think the World Economic Forum have run the blue horse in the UK into the ground, and now they want to wheel out the nice, fresh red horse. People will think it's going to be different, but it'll be exactly what's been happening, but on steroids.
And that's what we're experiencing in New Zealand. Christopher Luxon, unlike Jacinda Ardern, all the WEF leaders, do you notice, they all want to leave early because they drain their popularity by being so brutal. But Christopher Luxon is very covertly, quietly rolling out all of the Agenda 2030 ghastly goals, including we've just had some bills for mass immigration, nothing discussed in public. We've got completely corrupted court system here, Andrew. I've just experienced it firsthand. A judge.
We've got the same UK. It's appalling over here.
Appalling judiciary. And I used to believe in the judiciary because I was trained as a lawyer. Judges.
You're talking to someone who's got Matt Hancock in court tomorrow in the High Court, Royal Court of Justice again tomorrow for another hearing.
You have?
Yes.
Andrew, you're under so many different layers of this. But the thing is, to take it into their arena, one has to be well aware it is totally fallen and totally corrupted. So where do we go with this? We must begin by saying Andrew Bridgen needs to be voted in. The people of your area, what is your area? Just tell people exactly where it is if they want to fly over there and help you, Andrew, from New Zealand.
Northwest Leicestershire. And we do have an airport, East Midlands Airport, in the constituency. Northwest Leicestershire, we're the very centre of the UK, furthest constituency from the sea in any direction. It's a battle royal. It's disappointing that the Reform Party decided to put a candidate up against me as well to further split the vote. None of it makes sense.
If there's anybody who would sponsor a group of us from New Zealand to fly over, I would be very appreciative, and I'd be on that plane to go and do the footwork with a group of you New Zealanders. The other thing I'm going to ask New Zealanders to do is write into me, please, if you would like to do a small statement about why you think Andrew Bridgen is the world leader that the world needs right now. And we will record those messages and top and tail them, Andrew, with your vote Andrew Bridgen, and we'll send them over to you, and you can add them to your social media. We want to help you in any way we can. I'm going to do a series of cuts as well from previous interviews. What do you think your chances are? Do you feel that you can make it back in? 15 years.
Yes, I do. The response on the doorstep's as good as it's ever been, and I did get 60. I've stood. It's my 5th general election. I've won 4, and everyone was with an increased personal majority. It feels good on the doorsteps. But I mean, even, I speak to farmers about putting boards up where I've had them before. And although the farmers will maintain that they're fully supportive of me and will vote for me, they feel intimidated. They know what the establishment has done to me. And people are fearful, and that should never happen in free and fair elections in an open democracy. But that's not where we are now, Liz, as you know.
Absolutely. And the thing about fear is the more people give into fear, the more they will have to fear. That's it, isn't it? What was it you said when you're willing to give up your freedom?
Well, all around the so-called democracies of the world, people are being asked to give up their freedom for security. And anyone who gives up freedom for security will end up and deserve neither freedom nor security. And that's a fact.
What is the future looking for in this UK Uni-party if Keir Starmer gets in? He sounds a monster.
Well, it's very interesting that the last week before the shock snap election called by Rishi Sunak, we had an urgent question about the WHO, the pandemic treaty, and the amendments to the international health regulations, and not one backbench member of the Labour Party turned up to that urgent question, which is unprecedented. Liz, I can only presume that the only conclusion I can come to is they were whipped not to attend. Labour don't want to talk about the WHO because they're going to sign us up to whatever Bill Gates, the Chinese Communist Party, and Dr. Tedros want to inflict upon us. And that is so clear from what their front bench statements have been. They talk about cooperation. These instruments are not cooperation, as you know. They're capitulation, and we're giving away sovereignty that's not elected members' sovereignty to give away. We're giving away the people's sovereignty. And also what Labour have already signed up to, which again, they don't want to talk about, and the Conservative Party don't want to question them on it because they're complicit, is the fact that because of the threat held over our country of a major war with a superpower, Russia, the Labour Party have committed to taking it. We're already in NATO, but the Labour Party have committed to taking us into a defence pact with the European Union, which is bizarre because we're already in NATO. We're all in NATO. The only deal on offer is actually the European Defence and Security Pact, which is being enforced on all European Union nations. And that hands over full control, if Labour take us into it, and they won't discuss the detail, it'll give the Ursula von der Leyen, the unelected leader of the European Union, full control of the British Army, Navy, Air Force, MI5, MI6, GCHQ, access to the Five Eyes, and also give her control of our local police forces. That is, and we're a country that's only voted 8 years ago to leave the European Union.
So it's completely flying in the face of Brexit. It's completely flying in the face of what the people want. Andrew, what can the people do when they hear something like this? How can they hit back at these corrupted WEF, UN and WHO sponsored puppet leaders?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that across the country, the Labour Party are going to be forming the next government. I mean, they're 26 points ahead of the Conservatives, but they're only the two wings of the same bird of the Uni-party. But I mean, what will happen amazingly quickly after the election and the installation probably of Keir Starmer as the Prime Minister is that the public will understand that they've been completely betrayed again, and that there is actually no one in the mainstream parties to vote for. And what we need in our democracies around the world is a remote return to direct democracy. Democracy is from the Greek. Demos is the people and kratos is power. Well, I put it to Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, the rest of Europe, that the people don't feel very powerful. No. It's not people power, and the way to return to this is, in the UK, my solution would be that we need to get rid of the House of Lords. They've done nothing to protect the public interest from the things that have been perpetrated against them and continue to be so. We need to halve the number of MPs. We don't need 650. We don't really need 325. We need to draft legislation and we need to put the people back as the government and move to a Swiss-style direct democracy model where we have referendums and public debates on legislation probably every 3 months, and the people actually vote on whether then they will be the government, and then we will have democracy. And that's the only way that we're going to hold politicians to account, because quite honestly, they can't be trusted.
I agree with everything you said. Add in there to decentralize, get power back to the boroughs and the villages and the towns. And then on top of that, limited terms as well, so that they can't stand for a long time. They know that if they go in and they make a mess, for example, fiscally, they're going to be held to account. They're going to be out and they're going to be held to account in 3 years.
And as I've said to you before, the problem is that currently the people are scared of the politicians. And when the people are scared of the politicians, it's tyranny. And that's what we're seeing. People are actually scared to speak out, and they're worried what the government is going to inflict on them next. I think politicians have forgotten that we're the servants of the people. We're not their masters. Yes. And it just doesn't feel like that in Parliament anymore. But when the politicians are scared of the people, that is democracy. And we need to give the power back to the people, not give it away to the WHO, the World Economic Forum, the IMF, or anybody else.
The UN, which is so corrupt. But here's the key. It's the media. The mainstream media still sells us out at every turn. In my trial, both of the mainstream media journalists were heard by people there to be saying, this is ridiculous, Liz is being put on trial. It's ridiculous she's being held up for assault. She didn't do an assault. She touched someone lightly on the arm. Yet their mainstream media pieces did not reflect the truth. They went with the government narrative. We must win back in the UK, the BBC for the people, mustn't we? You must.
We must, and it's funded by the people, but I mean, it is a mouthpiece for the establishment.
Yes.
The biggest power that the mainstream media have is they decide what is the news, and it's the power of omission. It's what they don't talk about, and it's the same things. The media don't talk about the things that people don't want to talk about in Parliament. They don't want to talk about the WHO instruments taking away our sovereignty and inflicting effectively a one world government on us by the back door. They don't want to talk about vaccine harms. They don't want to talk about excess deaths. They don't want to talk about the insanity of net zero. They don't want votes on it. They don't want it recorded votes on it. They don't want it to all pass on the voice. And we have this unanimity across Parliament. And I think I need to be there and keep speaking out and speaking for the people. We have a saying in our Parliament, I'm sure it's true in yours as well, is that whenever the whole of Parliament agrees on anything, it's never good for the people.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And that's been proven true throughout my political career. That, I mean, I'm thinking about things like HS2 and things like that. But I mean, in my Parliament, the clapping seals are they're baying for war with Russia. I mean, at the end of the day, in the UK, we believe in nuclear deterrent, which is why we've got a couple of hundred warheads and our Trident submarines at sea, maintaining our independent nuclear deterrent so that no one attacks us. But we appear to be continually poking in the eye at the Russian bear, which is a nuclear superpower with nearly 6,000 nuclear warheads. Well, I mean, we either believe in nuclear deterrent or we don't. We're in very, very dangerous times. France and Germany have already passed the enabling legislation. They can call for conscription tomorrow if they want to, and they're talking about it in the UK, which is going down about as popular as a bowl of cold sick with our young people.
Well, there it is. In the meetings you're holding, are people aware? Because the strange thing is in New Zealand is many are waking up. Many are aware. This is corrupt. This is a uni-party. Luxon is really no different from Ardern. What is going on? There are those sorts of things, questions being asked. But there's still a kind of sheep mentality. I'm a bit afraid to speak up. I don't want to be too brave. Is it the same in the UK? People are aware but afraid, or are they not aware yet of how dark this is?
The majority of people are aware. I think the overwhelming majority know there's something seriously wrong and things aren't right, but probably some of them can't put their finger on it. But when I hold my public meetings in the villages, I mean, we'll have, I know, 40 or 50 people will turn up from a small village. What I detect and what they tell me is that they're quite reassured when they see some of their neighbours there, because they've been sitting in their silo thinking this is going on, but they feel so intimidated they can't talk to their neighbours about it. And then they're reassured when they see the man from two doors down is at the meeting and he's supportive of my position. And then suddenly they think, well, there's someone I can go and talk to about it. Because the level of self-censorship in this country and around the world is the pressure from the establishment, the mainstream media, the fact that anyone who goes against the narrative is vilified and cancelled, and that message hasn't been lost on the people, and they're feeling very intimidated. And you should never have that at any time, and certainly not during an election period.
Yes. And that's that damn Christchurch call that our former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern put around the world. Terrible misinformation and disinformation. And that's those of us who are telling the truth, while they in power are the ones spreading misinformation badly. Andrew, is your health okay? Are you keeping yourself well?
Yes, I'm walking about 15 to 20 miles a day. So my legs are pretty strong now. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and you're delivering leaflets and talking door to door.
Every day, yes. I'll do about 8 hours a day of that. And then
What
I'll
are the
go and speak in the evening.
Oh, you're amazing. What are the biggest concerns? It's normally what hits people in the hip pocket, isn't it? Inflation.
The economy, but we built up under the 14 years I've been the MP for North West Leicestershire. We've moved my constituency from regarded as the poor relation in my county to the highest economic growth in the country, and the only part of Leicestershire that's got above UK average salaries. We've built enough houses to keep the house prices down, and they're very good quality. So my constituents are the best in the country to withstand the economic impact. But I'm even watching all the work we've done over 10 years, over the last 4 years. It's being eroded away, and people's living standards are falling. And if we're the best in the UK, I mean, goodness knows, God save the rest of them. That's what I say. But I mean, it's the biggest issue is the uncontrolled migration. People just flooding into the country, being put up in 4-star hotels. I've got the two hotels, migrant hotels, shut. They're shutting now, but that isn't stopping them. All that happens is, and I believe it's the disastrous HS2 high-speed rail system, where they bought hundreds and hundreds of houses, or thousands of houses across the country that now they don't need because it's been cancelled north of Birmingham. I believe it's these houses where they're now putting the migrants into. So they're still here. They're just dispersed amongst us, and they're giving them houses either of people who's having their houses repossessed because they can't make the mortgage payments, or the ones that they've already robbed off the people through HS2.
Let's address that because, as I said, New Zealand's just passed legislation that will allow a massive influx of migrants. It is not xenophobic to not want this massive influx. It's saying, for me, there's no way they can all be absorbed into the New Zealand culture. So what's behind it, Andrew? What is behind this world migration?
80% of the migrants coming across are men between the age of 18 and 39, and that raises concerns by the local. All the hotels that were used in my constituency, which have now got shut, they were all single men of that age group that were in them. It's not families, it's not children. The problem is that most of them are getting asylum for whatever reason. I mean, these people are what they are. They're illegal immigrants. The analogy I always use is if we had a working men's club in the village, and we came in the morning and someone had broken into the club and was sitting there eating the peanuts and said, "I want to be a member of the club, so I broke in and I want you to have a whip round for my membership fee." I don't think we'd allow that. But this is what we're encouraging. These illegal migrants are making a mockery of the legal migration routes. They're queue jumping. They're insulting those people who are playing the game properly, and our migration figures are being masked. But they always talk about net migration of 700,000. But what they don't want to repeat to you is that 500,000 indigenous Brits are giving up on this country every year and moving abroad. So really, we've got 1.2, 1.3 million new arrivals a year. That means that about 1 in 50 people walking the streets of my country have been here less than a year. And at that rate, next year, it'll be 1 in 25 have been here less than 2 years. We can't assimilate these people. They're genuinely unskilled. So all they're doing is keeping wages down at the bottom end of our economy, the people who need the most help. And they're not a threat to me economically, and they're not a threat to you. But what they are is probably the last wave of legal migrants. These people are competing for the same scarce resources of jobs and accommodation. They're the biggest burden on them, and they don't want them either.
What do you think, though, is the reason behind the WEF? We'll call it the Agenda 2030.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing, isn't it, Liz? That is, they want an end to countries' identities, and this mass migration. We're seeing it in America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, in Europe, the UK. It's happening everywhere at the same time. It's another one of these lockstep policies. Another thing which, if we could move to a direct democracy, we could have a referendum in the UK every year on how many migrants we want to let in, and that would have to be the limit. Of course, the establishment really don't like referendums. They don't like democracy at all because they just can't control the people.
And so they really want this ridiculous one world government idea. They want a whole melange that has no sense of country, of place, of history of country at all. They want everything watered down into one congealed mess of people who have no.
I like the old saying, and it may have been from Russia, that a country that doesn't have a history doesn't have a future. And the future will be whatever they want. They want to erode our differences. But what they're actually doing is, the whole point of being able to travel to different countries is to experience a different culture and enjoy it. And they're trying to put the whole of the world into some sort of, instead of the vibrant colours of our countries, we're going to be a sort of sad, sort of drab, universal grey.
It's so sad. And it's also, they can have more power, and it's harder for us all to stand up and say, get out, UN, get out WEF, get out WHO. What else? So you said immigration is something that you're finding when you go door to door. Any other big issues? Is the jab still a big issue for many people? And
I'm finding vaccine injured people all over my constituency, and people who have lost loved ones and friends, and it's not slowing down. The ONS can rebase the expected deaths to hide the excess deaths, but can't hide the fact that the undertakers are flat out busy, and in London you can wait 8 weeks to have someone either cremated or buried because of the backlog.
And that's unprecedented, isn't it? That's never been seen before.
We're in the summer where you normally have less deaths, but in the winter it's absolutely unbelievable. They can't hide the bodies, and that's one of the reasons I've campaigned on the excess deaths, is because whatever the government say, an increasing proportion of the people are going to be aware of this. And we're going to talk shortly about another revelation on, there's been a number this week. I don't know, did you see the study from the Oxford University study that was out last week? They looked at 30,000 children no benefit whatsoever from the vaccine, and those who are vaccinated have a 20% increased chance of death or hospitalisation. That's what we've done.
Absolutely horrendous, and growing numbers of cancers in children. Let's talk about your post this morning from the Harvard professor. I think Dr. Francis Boyle, what did he say in that post you put up? For anybody who's not following Andrew Bridgen on Twitter, make sure you do. Your posts are uniformly good, Andrew.
At A Bridgen on Twitter, or X as it is now. Professor Francis Boyle was a Harvard University educated lawyer, and he drafted the US legislation for the Bioweapons and Anti-Terrorism Act 1989. And what he's written is an affidavit to court, which obviously, if he was perjuring himself, he'd be serving a prison sentence. And he says that under the drafting of that act, which is enacted, he would classify the mRNA vaccines, so-called, as bioweapons, because it's clear that the intention of creating them was to cause death and harm.
It's extraordinary. And this is Ron DeSantis, who's trying to get them withdrawn and trying to get the vials completely, the distribution of the vials completely stopped. There are moves afoot, but it's still slow, isn't it? It's even though many people know, the governments are pressing on with an arrogance that I've never seen before.
That is another reason why Rishi Sunak called a snap general election. I think he knew that the narrative was unraveling around the COVID vaccines increasingly quickly. And if he didn't call the election before, if he'd waited another 3 weeks, he can't really call it during summer recess, then it's going to be October. And the rate of information coming out with regard to the adverse events and deaths attributed to the so-called COVID-19 vaccines, it's increasing exponentially. And I think he realised that it would have unravelled by the autumn. And again, he'd got to get cut and run now, because there's so much political capital by the Uni-party in the vaccines. Although in my the last week of Parliament and the debate I had a couple of weeks before that on excess deaths, no one dares say safe and effective anymore in the UK Parliament.
Huh. It's a small.
They call it the best solution, but they can't use safe and effective. I mean, quite honestly, every time if they say safe and effective now, I think they're putting 5 to 10 years on their sentence when we get them in court.
Yes, and actually, rather than the best solution, it should be the final solution, an allusion back to Nazi Germany, because it is eugenics. It really is eugenics in action.
Did you see what I mean, we've obviously, in the UK, we've got the excellent and very courageous Professor Angus Dalgleish, who's our most eminent oncologist, cancer expert. And he's been calling for a long time now for the vaccines to be stopped, and making the evidence that they're causing a huge increase in cancer rates. Well, his equivalent in Japan, Masanori Fukushima, he's come out very publicly and said that the vaccines rollout's got to be stopped, and anyone asking to continue it is effectively murder. I mean, he's come out. The Japanese seem to be coming out. Also, that the former Home Affairs minister has come out and apologised for all the harm that the vaccines have done last week. So I think Japan, they've got very good data. It would appear that their politicians and their healthcare professionals have got some honour, and I salute them, because everyone who comes out, wherever it is in the world, you are going to be attacked relentlessly by the mainstream media, because there's huge vested interests that are behind all of this. And I'll come back and I'll remind your viewers what was told to me by the Conservative Party before I was expelled, so a year last January. And they said to me, Andrew, there's currently no political appetite for your views on the vaccines. There may well be in 20 years' time, and you're probably going to be proven right then. But in the meantime, you need to bear in mind you're taking on the most powerful vested interest in the world, with all the personal risk for you which that will entail. And they weren't lying to me. I mean, what's been done to me personally is, and I know all the scientists, brave scientists and doctors who've spoken out in the UK, I mean, it's appalling. And that is very telling that anyone who breaks the narrative has to be destroyed financially, personally, reputationally, and everything else. But people are waking up.
And that's what they did to me in the court. And I won't lie, I was really pretty down for a couple of weeks. And do you know, Andrew, the thought of talking to you is something that has renewed my spirit, if you like. It is such a joy for me to talk to you because you're so honest and you're brave and you speak so with such care for the people, not just of the UK, but of the world. Your message is a world message. You know, Luxon here, and not only did he tell somebody 2 elections ago, who I know, who traveled with him in the election, that he admired Gates and loves vaccines, thinks they're great, but he is about to roll out a brutal policy. I don't know if the UK has this, but anybody on a benefit who has a disabled person in the family, that family benefit will now be linked to being up to date with the COVID jabs. And this is in light of all of this world information. So they are still pushing it in New Zealand as if none of this world information is coming out. Andrew, what
That's
can...
evil. That policy is truly evil. We've also got pledges now from the Conservative Party, well, the Tory Party. There's nothing conservative about them, that they're going to have a big crackdown on welfare. And since the COVID vaccine rollout, the number of long-term sick, unable to work, of working age in the UK has gone from 2.1 million to 2.9 million. So they've caused the problem. Now they're going to say, well, we're going to cut the benefits back and force people back to work. And again, you know, they're still pushing these jabs. There's going to have to be a reckoning, Liz, and it's not going to be pretty.
No, it's absolutely brutal. I heard of someone the other day who needs a heart operation and cannot get it unless they agree to the jabs. That again, just blackmailing people.
Well, one of my constituents, a man called Stephen Miller, came to see me a long time ago, and he was one of the reasons I spoke out. He was in his late 40s, perfectly healthy, had 2 AstraZeneca shots in the summer of 21, was so ill within weeks that he lost his job. And he was an IT engineer in the quarrying industry, so he was mapping out where they got to take the stone from next and everything. A very well paid job. He's lost his house, his partner, his access to his children. He's now been diagnosed with vaccine-induced cardiomyopathy. He's got 75% left ventricular failure, and he's been told that he has less than 5 years to live unless he gets a heart transplant. And he knows, and I know, he isn't getting a heart transplant. They've just stolen 30 years of his life. And I'm working with him to try and get him his compensation, but how is a maximum of £120,000 possibly any compensation for what he's lost?
Oh, Andrew.
And when last time I saw him, he had a resting pulse rate of 145.
Good Lord. Gosh, it is evil. It is evil what they have done. We need you in the UK Parliament. We need you to be in the world scene in terms of leadership and guidance. So if anybody would provide funds to get a group of us over to the UK, I would be deeply grateful. Please write to liz.gunn@freenz.org. But if any of you watching this can independently go over, I can put you in touch with Andrew's group and you can go and help deliver leaflets independently. Have a holiday in England and go and help Andrew. We've got until when? July the 4th? Is that right?
July the 4th is polling day, yes.
So when do you campaign until what date? When will you be stopping the
I'll be campaigning right up on polling until polling day.
And you would welcome any Kiwis who come over to help you as your Andrew's army?
I would. We were a non-discriminatory organisation. I'd welcome anybody. It's not where you come from. It's what's in your heart and what's in your head that I'm interested in. And we've got, this is a war on humanity, and we've got to win, Liz.
You have to win. You are such a treasure. And the last request I'm going to make, please write in if you would like to film a message about Andrew, why you admire and love him so much, as I do, I will be putting those messages into short clips that Andrew can use in his social media, saying things like, from New Zealand, we support him across the globe because of what he's doing with his courage. Could you write to me again, liz.gunn@freenz.org, if you'd like to do one of those messages? Andrew, I'll keep in touch with you, and we will make sure we do some short, sharp clips that you can add to your social media campaigning. I'll be keeping my fingers and toes crossed for you. We need you. The world needs you.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Bye, Andrew.
Thank you. Bye-bye.